Our nation's political life seems to be more divided than it used to be. But a recent lecture sponsored by Psi Kappa Psychology Club suggests that polarization may be the rule rather than the exception.
The potential for us to disagree is always there. It's very strong. And what happens is in certain moments in history, particularly for a nation when there's a very strong external threat, we tend to set that aside. So we basically rally around the flag as we did in the period post 9/11, as we did in World War II or in the Cold War era that followed it. But really, once you move past the Cuban Missile Crisis, and certainly with the fall of the Soviet Union, the U.S. doesn't really have a real apparent international opponent to help unify us. So we're much less, our perception of how important foreign threat is has dropped dramatically from the mid-60s to today. And with that, I think we've lost a force that basically could help suppress our natural tendency to disagree. So once that threat is lifted, we tend to move into more polarized eras where our differences are on full display, as they certainly are today. The thrust of my research and of the presentation is that the differences between liberals and conservatives are not just momentary issues or responses to elites of the day, but are actually built into us physiologically, so that we're basically, in the same sense, I think that people are born with a sexual orientation, people are born with a political orientation. So if you're a conservative and your family's not happy with you, you just say, look, I was born that way. Same thing if you're a liberal, you're born that way. For moderates, I think it helps explain what all the fuss is about. For moderates, don't have that inborn liberal tendency or inborn conservative tendency, so that all of that dispute looks a little unnecessary to them, but that's because they're fortunate not to have been born a liberal or a conservative.
Is this something we just have to accept? Or can we use this understanding to improve how our civic life functions?
I mean, I would hope so. I serve on the board of a group called the Institute for Civility in Politics that works very hard across the country to get people to engage in political discussion, not to pull away because it's, in a polarized era, political discussion can be unpleasant, but we have a civic responsibility to engage our fellow citizens in political discussion. So to be engaged in civics, but to do it in a civil way. I think we can do that. And for me, one of the things that's been helpful, particularly when I think about it at sort of a smaller scale, so when I'm dealing with my neighbors, many of whom have very different political views than I do, I just recognize that they're not differing, that they don't differ from me simply because they are wanting to give me a hard time, or because they're ignorant, but they see the world differently. They're built to understand the world differently. So I don't, my father was left-handed, and when he was in school, they spent a lot of time trying to make him right-handed. It didn't work. We don't even try that anymore. We just accept that some people are left-handed and some people are right-handed. So that's, I tell my students, if, most people the age of my students are completely accepting of sexual orientation differences. And they believe they're inborn. They believe that that's just the way the person is built biologically. So all I ask them to do is, if you're a liberal, when you see a conservative, just say, okay, they have a different political orientation than I do. I wouldn't be good at being what they are, but I don't have to give them grief about it. They're not doing it just to give me a hard time. They really do see the world differently.
For more information about Psi Kappa activities and other events on campus, visit www.hccs.edu. For HCC Beat, I'm Stacee Hawkins.